We begin our journey in Georgia's capital, Tbilisi. It lies on the Kura River and was established by King Vakhtang Gorgasali 1,500 years ago. Even today, his equestrian statue welcomes every visitor because, according to an old proverb, he could well be sent by God. The king resided here in the ancient northern capital Mtskheta. Excavations suggest that his palace probably stood on the opposite bank. The slopes of Tbilisi at that time were covered with a dense forest, a favorite hunting ground of King Vakhtang. According to a legend, he went hunting in a canyon with his falcon. Maybe it was here that today is the botanical garden of Tbilisi. As the hawk did not return, the king sought him and found him together with a pheasant in a hot spring, unfortunately dead. King Vakhtang realized the importance of hot springs and decided to stay where the thermal baths flowed, establishing the new capital and calling it Tbilisi, the Georgian word for hot water. The water still flows here in the underground bathhouses with domed roofs, which were frequented by many poets including Dumas, Pushkin and others, and immortalized in their works. Only the Oberliani bathhouse, which has the appearance of a mosque, is above ground. Even today, more than 1,500 years later, it is not clear exactly where the hot water comes from in the Holy Mountain. The bath district of Abano-Tubani is right across from the equestrian statue of King Vakhtang. Proof of the legend? Not true, says our guide David. But it is but a beautiful legend, and we are very excited to be in King Vakhtang's city. Our hotel, Epic, is the starting point of our city tour opposite the Zmina Zameva Cathedral. It is the largest religious building in Transcaucasia and towers over the city. Especially at night, when it is lit, it is visible from far away. This Holy Trinity Cathedral, with its 84-meter-high tower, was built on the former Armenian cemetery on the Elias Mountain and inaugurated in 2004. David indicates that the bells in the tower were cast in Germany. Upon first entering the Georgian Orthodox Apostolic Church, we are impressed by the size, grandeur, and colors, as well as the many images of saints. Even the restoration work does not affect the splendor. Back outside, our gaze falls on this futuristic building on a slope of the Holy Mountain, located above the old town and the former town hall. It even has a helipad and belongs to the billionaire Ivanishvili. There's a good view of the huge monument of Mother of Georgia here. The 20-meter-high aluminium statue was set up in 1958, 1,500 years after the city was founded. The sword in her right hand to ward off enemies, and the cup of wine to greet friends in the left symbolizes the national character of the Georgians who succeeded through Soviet times. We leave the Elias Mountain and start the tour of the old district of Labari near this huge fountain. Surrounded by the traffic of many Western cars, it stands in the middle of the roundabout, but is not in operation today. But our real goal is these bronze statues symbolizing characters from the very popular movie Mimino from the Georgian director Georgi Danelia. Supposedly a cult movie from the year 1977 during the Soviet era, and Mimino, Uncle Vanya and Rubik are still very well known and popular. We notice the second counter at the traffic lights, because in Germany we don't have this. We continue toward Metechi Bridge and Church and see old houses with the famous Georgian balconies, which here look brittle and unkept. But only a few streets away, it looks quite different. David informed us that these restored houses are located in one of the more expensive neighborhoods. At the end of the road is a King David monastery. This man turns around and makes a sign of the cross, a gesture that we will see more often. Behind the next corner our destination appears. The Metechi Church to the Blessed Virgin Mary. Inside the church is the grave of the wife of King Vasken, who tortured her to make her give up the Christian faith. This small church was built as part of a castle in the 5th century by King Vachtan Gorgasali. Its transformations tell the history of Georgia. In the 13th century it was completely destroyed by the Mongols, but was rebuilt by King Dimitri II later in the same century. For this he had to bargain with his life, but was nevertheless killed. Since then he is known as a self-sacrificer. During the Ottoman rule the church could no longer be used, and it remained that way until the reign of King Eregle II in the 18th century. The castle, still clearly visible on an old photo, was used in the early 19th century by Russian troops as a prison and later demolished. Today there's only the Metechi Church, whose name derives from the legend of a King Gorgasali's broken oath. At this point he wanted to fight the kidnapper of his sister and told him he could cross the river, but he broke this pledge and shot him in the middle of the Kura. Due to remorse over his broken oath, he created 4 churches other than the Metechi Church, whose name means something like, "Here I have broken my oath." This round place in front was a market in the olden days. The vendors and farmers came from all over Georgia and beyond with wine, sheep, carpets and other items. The king forbade bulk purchases until noon to keep large vendors from gaining a monopoly over the citizens of Tbilisi. The area today is characterized by modern and sophisticated buildings like these 2 metal tubes. There will be a theater after construction has finished. The public service hall is also modern. It is a sort of town hall where citizens can get essential documents from birth certificates to death certificates. Behind the tubes is the presidential palace with its glass dome, reminiscent of the German Reichstag. Parliament does not sit here in Tbilisi. We will see it on our trip in Kutaisi later. In front of the theater tubes, a very futuristic new pedestrian bridge was built over the Kura River called the Peace Bridge. It was designed by the Italian architect Michele De Lucchi, built by the German company Power Glass. It is particularly eye-catching at night when Philippe Martinot's light design comes into action. 48,000 LEDs and 240 sensors interact with the movement of pedestrians. On the way to the cable car station, we pass this relief on which we try to find Georgia on the European continent. David indicates the location of Georgia, but we both agree that Iran is not part of Europe. The cable car runs from the left bank of the Kura, the Rike shore, to the Narikala fortress on Holy Mountain. Also, the journey only takes a few minutes. We enjoy a fantastic view over the roofs of the old town. From the top, we can see the ruins of the Narikala fortress. It was built at the end of the 4th century by the Persian Sassanids at the narrowest part of the Kura where the trade routes crossed. Like so many buildings in Georgia, it was destroyed several times by various invaders and rebuilt by the Georgians. The final blow came in 1827 when lightning struck the gunpowder magazine of the Russian army and destroyed most of the buildings. We leave the fortress via the steep but safe staircase and try out a very popular custom in the region. Anyone who wants to make a wish ties a cloth to a tree and can then expect their wish to come true. The proximity of the tree to the St. Nicholas or wedding church shapes the nature of the majority of the wishes. Descending further offers spectacular views such as the old town on Peace Square with St. George's Column or the futuristic registry office. Below, we pass an Armenian church and later even a mosque. Georgia has always been a very liberal country that tolerates other religions. We leave the Spa district and pass the Metechi Bridge on the right and go into the old town to Chardin Street. It was named in memory of the French explorer Jean Chardin, who visited Tbilisi in 1863. Formerly called Dark Alley, with stalls, small kiosks and workshops, it rather resembled a bazaar. Today, it marks the entrance to a chic district with restaurants, galleries and sculptures. Also in the early afternoon it is quiet. However, this figure practically jumps out of the wall. This is the film director Sergei Parajanov on his way to immortality, and it seems he has succeeded. He died in 1990. This guide will certainly lead us astray, or is it art? This bronze statue is a replica of Tamada, a kind of master of ceremonies at Georgian tables, as David explained to us. He is the one who decides who is speaking and what is to be said in which order. It is here because this is where archaeologists found a small bronze statue of 7 cm size dated from 7th century BC. Directly behind Tamada, in a small park, is a bust of the very famous and popular Georgian actress Sofiko Chiorili. Altogether, Georgians seem to love figures like this traveler at the Conca station staying at a cafe of the same name in front of a trolley car. We will see more of those Concas, which are used today as wine or beer bars. We leave the district and come to the Sion or Sioni Cathedral, which is slightly lower than the street, like in a courtyard. It is the main church of the Patriarch of all Georgia churches, although it does not look like it from the outside. On the other side of the road stands a 3-stage clock tower built in the style of Russian classicism. And on the left, above the north entrance, stands a 2-story bell tower from the 15th century. In the cathedral, we are surprised not only by the Orthodox Christian singing of the clergy, but also the glorious interior that is surely worthy of a patriarch. The church was named after Mount Zion in Jerusalem and is dedicated to the Virgin Mary. In ancient Tbilisi, in the 6th and 7th century, it was the largest religious building with a central dome. Centuries later, during the siege by the Persian Shah Abbas I in the early 17th century, the dome was destroyed and the church converted into a mosque. At the beginning of the 18th century, King Wachtang VI built a new dome, which was destroyed at the end of the same century by the cruel Persian ruler Aga Muhammad Khan. It was not until 1939 that the church was completed again. The pictures are from the Russian painter Grigory Gagarin. But the main attraction is a sacrosanct relic left of the altar where the cross of St. Nino lies. It was brought to Georgia from Jerusalem in the 4th century. A few meters further we get to the seat of the Patriarch of Georgia, who resides here behind the thick bronze door. We pass the carpet dealer, and on the other side is an old caravanserai where traders used to rest their camels overnight in Shavlati Street. This huge building is now under construction. Again, we reach a street with many restaurants. There's even German beer. The fear of the camera that this young woman shows is quite common here in Tbilisi. We are on the way to the oldest church in Tbilisi, the Anchichati Church, a three-aisled basilica from the 6th century. It is tucked away from the road and was frequently restored or enhanced, as is evident from the facade. Over the years, the church was not only restored but extended. Nevertheless, this relief medallion at the top of the west facade remains preserved in the style of the 5th century. The bell tower was only erected in the 17th century. There's another legend regarding the origin of the name of the church. In the 12th century, the time of Queen Tamar, a goldsmith in a place called Anchi created a golden icon of the Savior. The Georgian word for it is Shati. When the Turks conquered Anchi, which is now Turkey, the Georgians fled with the precious icon and hid it in the church and joined the word Anchi with the word Shati to name it Anchi-Shati. Today the icon is in the Art Museum. The interior of this basilica is divided into 3 naves with 3 entrance openings through the lateral and western walls. As we leave the old church again, we notice this building with the metalwork on the side and the strange twisted chimney. It is the popular Café Sanssouci, right next to the National Marionette Theatre, named after the Georgian writer and director Gabriadze. The new landmark of the theatre is a leaning tower. It was inaugurated in 2010 and looks like a random pile of cardboard boxes. We leave Shavteli Street and turn into Baratashvili Street, where we are struck by the sight of these dancers. They are the wine-loving dancers Beri Karoba from the sculpture Mona Selidze. They are improvised and masked figures from Georgian folk plays. Just a few steps further on, we see the famous lamplighter of Tbilisi, a large bronze statue. And next to it is another conker, this time a wine bar. The contrasts of old and new Tbilisi are apparent in this street. Beautiful green-covered balconies against a cold glass exterior. As we near Pushkin Street, we see this unusual blue house with many balconies. But even more striking is the statue of Georgian architect Kavlashvili, who designed the whole neighborhood. Here excavations were begun in 2012 and traffic has to yield around them. The old city walls are very handsomely preserved. On the way to Pushkin Square, we passed this huge building, the State Art Museum. This used to be a Russian Orthodox seminary, which was visited by the young Stalin, but unfortunately he finished not successfully. The place has its name from the famous Russian poet Pushkin, who was often in Tbilisi and the Caucasus, which he immortalized in his works. The fountain concludes the Pushkin Square, then comes Freedom Square, a very large and congested traffic knot. Around the square are some striking buildings such as the former town hall, now a hotel, as well as the State Bank and the Money Museum. Where today stands the Column of St. George, there used to be in Soviet times a statue of Lenin. This was replaced after Perestroika with St. George, the heroic white knight from the time of the Crusades. The Georgian people still call their country by its ancient name Sakartvelo. In the Orthodox Church, St. George is venerated as a martyr who typifies the spirit of the country's brave people. St. George's influence on the country is seen also on its national coat of arms since its latest version from 2004. In the evening of the first day we finish in a restaurant with typical Georgian dishes and wine and agree that we have seen a lovely and exciting city and met at least one of the friendly local residents. Tina and Elena really want to go to the flea market at the Dry Bridge, so I use the time for some interesting observations. Of course, I take a look at the many bargains that include devotional objects from the Soviet era, which are sometimes even offered along with a flag of the European Union. Because of the poverty that is prevalent here, people sell almost anything here, bringing in a little extra income. Colorful images of different motifs are offered. A portrait of Stalin stands beside the sleeping Venus. Everything is arranged very nicely and is offered discreetly. We can look at and touch everything, and at the end the price, which is moderate anyway, is negotiated. I'm not interested in the Lenin bust, but Stalin I bought for a later chapter on the Soviet dictator. It is a miniature version of the original statue that stands at the small square next to the flea market, which is covered by pigeons today. When they all suddenly approach me, flying in formation, my first reaction, escape. Then I hear a woman talking to them and follow her to the other side. This pigeon lady of Tbilisi is there to feed them with grain. The attack, or rather the welcome, was for her. On a bench opposite the Jehovah's Witnesses try to pick up new recruits, which is apparently very tiring. A few days later, they want Elena to join as we take a stroll through the northern part of town. She declines naturally. On the way, we pass through neighborhoods that are not part of the tourist areas and see many old, dilapidated houses. The further we go, the more we can see that the old houses still retain the charm of bygone decades. These images are familiar to us from East Berlin after the fall of 1990, except that here there is no rich western part of the country that might contribute funding. As we are approaching the Marianashvili neighborhood, we see the first block of renovated houses and can imagine how it will look when all the old buildings are renovated and shops are open. The reason for so many wedding galleries was not clear to us, but there are more than 20 of them. Meanwhile, we have arrived at Marianashvili, and the buildings are not only very well renovated, but the new ones are very modern and in a non-uniform architectural style. Certainly this area of Tbilisi is one of the most beautiful and modern we have seen on our entire trip. It seems that there is indeed money available. The place is very spacious and also very busy because of all the shops. Should an incident occur, immediately several police officers restore order. The police force was reformed several years ago and has since been very efficient. We stroll along the avenue up to Chogoreti Square and are very impressed with the variety and appearance of the buildings, several of which are reproduced here. Very rarely, the entire building is still not restored, as here in this side street. At Marjanashvili, we leave this modern district of Tbilisi and walk the same road over to the Vera Bridge with its two mighty lions. Along the Kura River appeared the framework of a new hotel. Our goal is to go to Rustaveli Avenue. On the way, we pass the Watches of Tbilisi. They point to the connection between time and man and consist of 9 figures of Georgian artist Tamar Kvesitadze. And a little further on, we find this group of 3 nymphs standing before the Deutsche Vita nightclub, but not part of the entertainment. The massive building and the dense traffic tell us that we are on the boulevard of the capital. It is 1.5 kilometers long and runs parallel to the Kura River from the Liberty Square to the Square of the Rose Revolution. It received its name in 1918 after the Georgian poet Shota Rustaveli, but it was already established in 1848 by the Russian Vice King Vorontsov with theaters, palaces and residences for the Georgian nobility in the style of Classicism, Art Nouveau and Baroque. As a son of a Russian diplomat, he spent many years of his youth abroad, including Italy and England. Here he gathered ideas, later brought forth as viceroy within the Caucasus and Tbilisi. Today, Rustaveli Avenue is a very popular promenade past the many shops, cafes and bookstores for both locals and tourists to use. Everywhere we see small bronze statues portraying scenes from the life of the Georgians. The saxophonist in the wall is most striking. Even more striking is this gigantic building in which a school is located. Next to it is the old parliament building with a fountain in front of it, but which is currently not the political seat but serves the finance industry. We end our tours through part of the capital here in the Peace Court. We couldn't see everything due to time constraints. Tbilisi has so many interesting places that convey many a legend from the rich history of this city. Of course, dinner in a Georgian fork restaurant should not be missed, so we conclude the first part of our journey here in this restaurant. It is a very big place with many small open dining pavilions, but David leads us into a large hall with live music from the house band. In no time the table is bountiful and David explains the different options. In front of my eyes is a cucumber and tomato salad with walnut, suguni cheese, baked cream cheese, green and red spinach, paprika and eggplant with walnut sauce,
aubergine in walnuts, paprika in walnuts,
chicken in walnut sauce,
in walnut sauce,
quark with mint, and chopped chicken salad.
Hähnchen salad.
Spontaneously, Tamada, the master of ceremonies, came into my mind. Of course, one should not miss the Georgian meat skewer. We have had this dish every day of our trip in different variations on the table. And one certainly must not miss Georgian wine. We drink the famous Mukuzani, allegedly Stalin's favorite wine, which is as delicious as all of the Georgian food. Finally, we experience different Georgian dances that are best explained by quotations from Georgia inside. The drive back to the hotel through Tbilisi at night and a short time to enjoy the beautiful illuminated city once again to end our visit.